All right. Good afternoon. Thank you guys so much for meeting with me. And I am excited to share with you guys today uh, part of our balanced literacy, which is shared reading. And I know you all have been working hard assessing your students and getting the data prepared and ready. And now you all kind of know where they're performing at in your classroom. And so hopefully today we can gain a better understanding of how to use shared reading within our classroom to help support our learners where they are at. So I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see the presentation. Again, since it's just your team, please feel free to unmute and ask questions or give comments. I want this to be really like a mutual meeting where we're collaborating and working together. It's not just me giving you a whole bunch of information, okay? So let's see. All right. Gotta move some things around here. Okay, shared reading. All right. Below you'll see some statements about shared reading, and I just want us to take some time and kind of read through them and let me know if you agree or disagree with those statements. So the first one is, the teacher reads aloud to a whole group and students listen quietly. Do you agree with that or disagree? I love it, Corey. I love the signal. Disagree, yes. Shared reading is not a read aloud. We want our students actively participating with us. So that should definitely be disagree. Okay, the second one. During shared reading, two students buddy read on one book. Do you agree or disagree? I've got some more disagrees. All right, another disagree. I love it. Okay. I mean, you could take the concepts that you work on together during shared reading and implement that during their read to self buddy reading time. That would be a great time for you to model what that conversation would look like for them to have with their partner. But again, we want this to be a group effort and we want to all be within the same book. Okay. The teacher models reading strategies. Do you agree or disagree? Yes, agree. I love it. Yes, this is the time where we get to reinforce what we're teaching during our reading workshop time. And shared reading, everybody takes turns. Okay. You might not have time for every single person to have a turn in your group, but yes, this is a time where you want to be able to share the book with your class. So everyone is taking a turn participating in the lesson with you. Okay, a teacher always uses a big book for shared reading.
Sometimes I just put a mentor text under my document camera and display it as long as the kids can see it.
That's exactly right. It doesn't matter the text or if it's a poem, a song, a big book, a guided reading book that's on their level, as long as the student can see the page with you and see the words, and that way they can actively participate with you in the reading. You can use the same book to teach different strategies. Yes, and we're going to talk about that later and really work on just creating kind of a sample plan for you to use throughout the week with the same book. You can, let's see, shared reading is choral reading. Sarah, I like it. I'm not too sure. Yes, there's a component, I feel like, towards the end of the week when these students have had the opportunity to look at this text with you repeatedly every day. They're going to know that book or that poem or that song or part of a book like the back of their hand. And that's a great opportunity for you to read it together and practice that fluency. In shared reading, the student's job is to enjoy the story. I could see the disagree. It's not just a sit back and take it all in, right? We want them to, again, be actively participating in the reading with us. Shared reading is a time to teach individual students. Yeah, I think shared reading is a time that's geared to, again, reinforce what you've been working on in your reading workshop time. Uh, you're teaching to the vast majority of your class, not really to specific individual students. That's really what your conferring time is for in your workshop. That's when you really get to meet their individual needs. And then lastly, the highest level of teaching support happens in shared reading. Okay. That one's hard. I think, Corey, tell me what you're thinking is the highest level of support, like guided reading?
Or yeah, conferring or guided reading. To me, the highest level of support would be like they need a lot of support. They need someone sitting there walking through, especially for your low kids. And that kind of went with the last one to me, that we're teaching to the masses here.
Yes.
And so that may be a high level of teaching, but it's not going to be necessarily a high level of support. If that,
Yes.
there's a distinction in my mind whether it actually exists or not.
No, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think it is definitely, it does support our students and it is up there, but I feel like your conferring time and your guided reading time is really going to give you the highest level of support for your students. Okay, so now that our mind is kind of thinking about the purpose of shared reading, what that really looks like, what that involves, let's continue on and talk about what is it really. Well, shared reading is an interactive approach to the teaching of reading. This is where students are able to develop new skills in a safe and encouraging environment that allows them all to experience success. They are sharing the responsibility of reading with you. So we all know that our curriculum is Units of Study by the Teachers College and Lucy Calkins, and they do a wonderful job of introducing these reading strategies, but it's a very fast pace, right? Usually we introduce it and then the next day we're on to the next thing. Shared reading is a time where you can come behind that and continue to reinforce those reading strategies that you've already exposed them to, but maybe have not had the opportunity to really model that for them repeatedly, because we all know that our youngest learners, they really need to see a lot of that in motion and in practice. And so this is a great time for them to be able to practice that without any pressure. You know, I feel like, and you might feel like this too, when you go and sit beside them for conferring, it's almost like their little heart starts to race because they know that you're really listening into them, right? Whereas like shared reading is more of, well, everybody's having a chance to go find that. And I see my friend maybe didn't get it on the first try. So that's okay. This is a safe place where if I come up and maybe I'm not too sure of where to find it with the pointer, that it's going to be all right. My teacher's right here to help continue to encourage me and show me the correct way. And then when we move back to that conferring and that guided reading piece, we're continuing to check in with them too. Like, oh, remember we worked on that during shared reading yesterday, and I just saw you do that on your own. I'm so proud of you for doing a slow check. I was in Sarah's room yesterday, so that was fresh. I just saw you do that slow check. We just practiced that all together yesterday. Way to go. And so it's like a cycle, right? We're introducing it in our workshop time. We're using this outside component of shared reading to reinforce and continue to model. And then we're looking for evidence of that within our conferring time and our guided reading time. That's kind of your data collection. Are they getting it? Or do I need to go back and continue to model that during shared reading? Okay. Any questions so far? You good? Okay. I just really like this little picture. I'm sorry. It makes my heart so happy when they're up here and they're like finding things in the book. Anyway, I just had to say that. All right. Next slide. Okay. So what are the benefits of shared reading? Well, you're getting engagement from every learner in your class. We all know that during our reading workshop time, often our kids are out and spread around the room, and we all have those students that become disengaged at some point. Maybe they don't have the stamina to practice those skills by themselves. Maybe they are just really struggling with a portion of that book, but you are over with a small group, so you can't necessarily go over and help them at that moment in time. But shared reading allows for every student to be actively engaged with you. Language development, that's so important for our ELLs, that they have the opportunity to be exposed to that vocabulary in a safe and encouraging environment, such as shared reading. For comprehension, we can incorporate things in our plan throughout the week to make sure that our students are really practicing good questioning as they're reading. I know Tiffany likes to do the 5-finger retell with her kids. That's another thing that you could practice doing with your students in shared reading, maybe towards the end of the week, just reinforcing those comprehension concepts. Word solving, I think for our first graders, that's probably the biggest bang for your buck with shared reading, is that you're modeling those strategies that you're trying to teach them through your reading workshop time, and they're getting to see you actively do that in the text, and then they're having an opportunity to come try it with you. Concepts about print is another benefit of shared reading, just reinforcing the parts of our book and what they're used for. And then that fluency piece, we kind of talked about the choral reading, but after we've practiced it all week, we can start reading with expression and paying attention to character voices. We can start working on scooping our words up so that they're fluent, and just being able to anticipate problem words that are coming. All of that is a benefit of shared reading. Yes, ma'am.
This may be covered later, so if it is, you can tell me to wait. But the word solving, that's one of the things that I've been really struggling with in my class, is that I'm trying to model a strategy, and the kids that already know the word just start shouting it out. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something you're going to cover later, but that's
We're not really, so we can stop and talk about that now, like management. What does that look like in your classroom during shared reading? And I know for me, especially when I would do word solving and covering it up, if I didn't have like multiple, and we'll talk about materials in a minute, but like if I use sticky notes and maybe they could see the word through the sticky note, that always caused problems. So I'd have to like multi-layer the sticky note. But I think it's also just setting up that atmosphere. Like, what does Mrs. Sargent expect for you to do during shared reading time? And even if you think you know what that word is going to be, it's so important to let our friends have an opportunity to try to figure that out for themselves. So maybe it's where they have to count like before they can raise their hand to try to say it or something. Or I used to have a student that had to have an animal, like a little stuffed animal in his lap, and he would whisper the answer to the animal in the animal's ear, because he was just very bright and very eager to have not only the correct answer, but to be the one to share the answer to. So it kind of like helped him solve that. So I think it's just finding the routine and what works for your kids. What about you guys? Do you have any suggestions?
I'm trying to tell them we help, we don't tell.
Yeah.
Because I know I may have stolen Tiffany's thunder, because that's what I've heard her say. But maybe my kids just aren't, it hasn't sunk in yet, maybe. I don't know if Tiffany had something else.
No,
No.
that's what I was gonna say, because that was one of our things, was helping partners, not telling them. So when I know that I'm about to get to a word that we're gonna work on, I like say it 10 million times. Okay, we're helping, we're not telling. We're helping, we're not telling. If you're ready to help, like, then you can raise your hand. But remember, you're not telling. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of helped them. But I mean, we're still getting used to that and practicing it. And I still have some that blurt out even when I do that.
Yes. And I think you'll always have that one that does, and that's just when you just ignore and you just continue to teach the strategy. You know, like I'm not even going to address that you chose to not follow the directions right now, but since everybody else is still engaged, even if we know what that word is, let's practice finding that. You know, Sarah, I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on you again. Yesterday we were in her room and she had a sentence and it was like something about turning off the light, or it was dark, so I'm going to turn on and it was just the L that they could see. So they were all like, light, 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 light. Well, it was really lamp. But she did like an amazing strategy with slow checking to where she re-engaged everybody to focus back on that word, and then they did the slow check together. So it's, even if they're shouting it out, it's, you could even say, thank you for that suggestion, let's see if that's correct. Like we can't just automatically assume, let, because it makes sense that this is the word that's here. Like what can we do to make sure, or how do you know that that's correct? And maybe start reinforcing some of those higher level questions for your kids that are already there, you know. Or I mean, even maybe pair them up like Tiffany said with a buddy that's maybe really struggling, where they can just have an opportunity to discuss it together. Like I think this word is going to be blah blah blah, what do you think? Well, why do you think that? And kind of start modeling those conversations, because like we talked about earlier, then you could transition that to buddy reading, and they're already used to having those conversations together and helping each other. So that's a great question, Corey. Anything else before we move on? Okay. So the basics of shared reading, it is one of the highest levels of support, like we talked about earlier. The purpose is modeling. It's for the teacher to show the students exactly what you expect them to do when they encounter these things in their books. Everyone should be able to see the book, the poem, passage, chart, uh, whatever you're using for shared reading that day. And it's really important that everybody needs to be able to see that. So I've seen where, like Tiffany was saying, maybe there's a guided reading book that's the vast majority of your class is on that level, and you feel like it has a lot of uh, good things that the students need to work on, and you put it on your document camera. I know that I've also seen here recently teachers are using Epic and Epic Rigby and finding those readers, and you can actually print like class copies of the book too. So when I was at a different campus, they had the same book in every student's hand and they were looking at the book together. So it wasn't necessarily displayed, but they each had a copy of the book. That's an idea that you could do as well. But I think we're most familiar with having the big book available and on the stand. But as our readers start reading at higher levels, those big books really aren't as appropriate and don't support what they really need, especially the end of the first grade year. The teacher is doing the reading, but the kids chime in or read along with the teacher. So again, you're leading and modeling, but they are actively participating with you. You can use the same book for several different purposes and for several different days. So I think that's the beauty of shared reading, and that we'll talk about in a little bit, is that I can plan kind of a sample schedule for the week, and then whatever book I'm choosing, I'm going off of that schedule. So again, we'll talk about that later, but you can use the same book for several days. And then the basics of shared reading is best for teaching what? What do you think shared reading is best for teaching?
I would maybe go, Sarah.
strategies, like you're modeling how to decode a word or whatever strategy you're wanting them to implement, that you can model what it looks like and have them do it with you and work through it.
Yes. We kind of talked about this already, but fluency, comprehension, I mean, all of those things are any kind of reading component. Shared reading is best for. Okay, so there's lots of fun materials that you can bring in for shared reading. The first one I have is WikiSticks. Do you know what these are? Okay, so I don't know if you can see this little picture right here, but they're like these waxy, bendable, almost like, oh, what are the fuzzy?
Pipe
Pipe
cleaner.
cleaners. Thank you, Corey. Pipe cleaners, but they're like waxy and they're super fun. So you can literally mold them and bend them to make letters. You can like bend them to box words and they stick on the page. So you can use them to underline, but you literally can get them on Amazon in this big like box and they're all different colors. And so that's a really fun material that you can use for finding sight words, parts of words. You know, if you're looking at contractions, maybe boxing the apostrophe or talking marks, like they're just really cool tools that the kids really love to use. And again, part of that engagement is I'm using these awesome things only during this specific time. So they get really excited because they know with shared reading, there comes some really cool supplies that we get to use. Highlighter tape, it's kind of like whiteout tape, but it's clear and it comes in all different colors. This is kind of what it looks like. So when you put it in your book, they can see through the tape and still see the word, but you can draw their attention to that portion. Overlays, like clear plastic pieces that you can cut. I used to have these in my kinder and first grade class, fly swatters, and I cut out the middle of it. So if you're finding like a special sight word, you can have them like slap the word in the book and the words in the middle, and they love it, or like a part of the word, or anything that you're trying to draw their attention to. And then this is correction tapes for innovations. That's more for like shared writing. When you have them share the pen with you, you can have that correction tape in case they make a mistake and you want them to go back and fix it. Okay, any other ideas? I know we have like pointers and things like that, but is there anything else that you maybe use for shared reading? All right. Okay. So we're going to take a quick couple of minutes and watch a video. This is a mentor teacher of mine. Her name is Becky Voigt. And Jill, I thought this would be great for you because she has been doing shared reading with her connected learners and their face-to-face. So she is recording videos using guided reading books and posting them for her kids at home and her kids in person. So they all watch the same shared reading together. So while we're watching this, I want you to think about her focus. Like, what behaviors or actions is she teaching for? Like, what knowledge is she trying to teach them or share with them or model for them? And then we'll talk about it after the lesson. Oh, I think. Maybe not. Let me see if it'll work here. Sorry, guys. Okay.
Hey everybody, how are you? I am ready to read some more books and I hope you are too. We're going to start out with our
I'm going to fast forward a little bit until she gets
right,
to the
using that first letter. really, really, really wants a new pet. And his mom is super nice and she says he can have one. So we're going to have to read to find out which pet Andy chooses. So see, he was walking by the pet store. See where it says pet store? And it's open. And so that's when he asked his mom, look what he said. He said, "Can I get a pet?" said Andy. You guys read that with me. "Can I get a pet?" said Andy. And what did Mom say? "Yes," said Mom. "You can get a pet." Now, on this next page, there's going to be some words that we don't know. So we're going to have to think what makes sense and what looks right, okay? Andy looked at the pets. Read that part with me again. Ready? Andy looked at the pets. He looked at a, If we use our picture, that word could be a lot of things, couldn't it? It could be bird. It could be rat or mouse or gerbil. It could be fish or snail. It could be a lot of things, couldn't it? So if it's bird, what would start with? It would start with a B, wouldn't it? If it's mouse, what would it start with? M. If it's rat, what are we going to see at the first? An R. What if it's fish? F. What if it's snail? S. We have a lot of thinking to do, don't we? All right, you ready to see the first letter of this one? He looked at a, let's check the first letter. See if I can get that off of there. So could it be bird? Can't be bird, can it? Could it be mouse? Mouse? Nope, that doesn't start like mouse. Could it be rat? No. Could it be fish? It could, couldn't it? So let's say he looked at a fish. That would look right, wouldn't it? All right, let's try the next one. Ready? He looked at a, so it still could be bird or mouse or rat or snail. All of those would make sense. Let's check. Let's look at the first letter. That first letter is a B, B. So could it be bird? It could, couldn't it? Could it be mouse or rat? No. And we already know it's not fish because we said that up here. Is it going to be snail? Nope. So I think it has to be bird. He looked at a bird. He looked at a, it's got to be mouse or rat or snail. So be thinking, if it's mouse, what are you going to see? If it's rat, what are you going to see? And if it's snail, what are you going to see? Let's check and see. So what's it going to be? It'll be mouse, isn't it? So now we're going to read this page and we're going to use those first letters to help us. Ready? Andy looked at the pets. He looked at a fish. He looked at a bird. He looked at a mouse too. Let me take all those off so we can see the whole word. That one's stuck. There we go. Almost. Okay. Let's read it one more time. Ready? Andy looked at the pets. He looked at a fish. He looked at a bird. he looked at a mouse too. So do you see how you have to check not just what makes sense, but also what looks right, okay?
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there because I think you get the idea of kind of what she was doing. So, what did she teach?
I think just using the strategy on how to solve tricky words for our curriculum is to check the picture. And I really liked the way she covered the whole word. Like I've left that the first letter uncovered, but I really like that by covering the whole word, she made them look at like all of the picture, all of the choices.
Yeah.
Without, like I like the way she did that first.
Yeah, really thinking about that meaning, like what really would make sense here before I even try to start looking at the letters. Yes. What else?
She was teaching them about checking the first sounds, making sure it looked right and made sense.
Yes. Yeah. I liked how kind of we were talking about earlier, layering the sticky notes. If you choose to do that, like instead of just revealing the word to them, how she gradually gave them that next part. Because I think we can all think of kids that really struggle with looking just right at the first letter and then thinking about what would make sense there. You know, it's kind of like we jump over that part. So it's like a gradual release. Let's look at the meaning, what would make sense, and now let's start looking at the first letter and adding that next layer. Okay, I see the bird, the mouse, the snail, but I need something that starts with M, you know, or B. Now that, and then kind of like Sarah's kids were doing yesterday, then going through and doing the check through the whole word. Does it look right all the way through and not just with that first letter? So really you could spend like a week just on searching for meaning. Then the next week add that next layer of now let's search using that first letter. And then the following week start working on, okay, now that we're looking with the first letter, let's check the whole word all the way through. So anyway, yes, what else? I think one thing that I really liked at the beginning that she did, which I think is really important, is she set up the scene for the book and gave them that really good book introduction. So they kind of already knew what was happening. They're going to the pet store, it's open, he's going to get to choose something to take home with his mom. And so they already kind of understand a little bit about the story before they're having to guess what would make sense. Because I think a lot of times we leave out that introduction. And so they've only read like 3 or 4 words on the page and they get stuck and they don't have enough meaning of what's happening in the story to be able to think about what makes sense there. So giving them that little bit of introduction allows them to be thinking about what's happening in the story before they even start reading. So I think that was another great thing that she did. Any questions or thoughts before we move on? Okay. All right, now let's get to planning because I know that's where you guys are at. One of the easiest ways to incorporate shared reading in your classroom is to develop a plan that stays the same. And the only thing that changes is your text every week, okay? And what you'll find is that your students start anticipating like, oh, it's Monday. Monday's the day when she gives us the little introduction and we might read a couple of pages together. And then, oh, it's Tuesday. I know a word's going to be covered up today and we're going to have to figure out what that word is, you know, and they start to anticipate that schedule too. And it just helps us kind of stay on track as well. Here's just an example of a shared reading weekly guide, and I will get you a copy of this, okay? I have a couple of things to share, but basically, this is the schedule. So on Mondays, you read the text and become familiar with it. Give them that book introduction, talk about what's kind of happening in the story, and here's some of that comprehension work. Maybe make a prediction about what's going to happen. Or try, if you read it, try to have them make a connection to the text or to the world around them. One of our favorite characters of mine is Mrs. Wishy-Washy. And so they get to know these characters and they're like, well, I'm making a prediction that somebody's going to get messy and Mrs. Wishy-Washy is going to have to clean it up, you know? And then you're reading throughout the week to check to see if that's correct. Tuesday, again, you reread the text. It doesn't have to be the entire book. You know, Becky stopped on the second page. You could just read the first 2 pages, and then the second day, read those first 2 pages again, just to work on that fluency of the words that you've already practiced. So reread the text and have them read it with you. And then maybe you work on decoding a few words from the text that are covered up, like we saw in that lesson today. Wednesday, reread the text again and have them work on identifying some sight words. Maybe you find a book that has sight words that are on your spelling list for that week, and then you work together to find the words within the story. Thursday, maybe reread the text and have the students read the whole thing with you, but add that fluency piece. We're going to pay attention to the punctuation today, and we're going to try to change our voice to show that. So maybe it's Mrs. Wishy-Washy and she's like, oh no, I see an exclamation point here. So we're going to go back and try to read that together with expression and try to sound just like Mrs. Wishy-Washy would when the pig gets in the mud again or something. You know what I mean? And then Friday, read the whole thing all the way through together and try to incorporate everything that you've worked on that week. In your units of study books, our curriculum from our district, at the end of every unit, they have a shared reading plan, okay? And so this is something that you could work on, and I'm happy to do it with you during a planning time, and pull out the big pieces from the shared reading plan. And then you can make a schedule like this, because they only plan out one book for you. But once you understand what concepts the shared reading is trying to reinforce for that unit, you could put it in a plan like this and pull any text and work on those same things. So maybe that's something that we work on together as a team, is just creating with each unit like a shared reading weekly guide. Okay, would that be something that y'all would want to do? Okay, so I know we don't have time today, but let's try to schedule a time soon that we can sit down and do that together, because I think that will really help. They separate it just kind of like this too, where you have your warm up and book introduction on the first day, and then there's some decoding work that takes place, and then the comprehension piece as well from what she's trying to reinforce throughout her unit of study. This one is a blank sheet. Oh, it's kind of small. Sorry, guys. Can you see that at all, or is it too small? Okay. But kind of like maybe this is something where we could take the unit of study, our curriculum, the shared reading plan in the back, and then we can just plug it into this reading planner. So your introduction sneak peek, maybe here's a day that we spend looking at tricky words or new vocabulary. Here's our word study, maybe word parts like ing, ed. Thursday, again, that fluency, maybe we're reading with expression. And then Friday, putting the whole book together. We're reading for fun today and celebrating what we've worked on this week. So that's just an easy planner that I have that I'll share with you guys as well. Okay. All right. So I brought a book today, just a guided reading book. But one of the things, if I did not have a plan, like if my district did not provide curriculum that had something somewhat outlined for me, these are the questions that I would ask myself as I'm looking at the book. And this is what I do when I plan for guided reading too, is I always look through the text and think, what are some things that I could teach using this book? Like, are there sight words that I see? Are there new word endings that my students might not have been exposed to yet? Is there a new, we have the word said on almost all of our books, A through C, but maybe they're starting to say shouted or asked or cried. Is there new words for said that we need to be looking at and practicing together? So that is always the first thing I try to do, is look at it through that lens. And then the second thing I try to think about is this a good book for my early learners? Is this something that is going to help prepare them for where they need to be right now? Or is it too advanced? Or is it maybe not, is it too easy? Try to think about the majority of my class, and is it a good book for everyone's learning? So that's really all I have for you guys today. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes. Is there any questions or anything that I can help answer? I know we're going to plan and try to think of a template together, but is there anything else that I can do for you guys, or that you need me to answer?
I think sitting down and kind of planning some would be really helpful, because I'm not the best of helping the new friends pull a book, because I just pull ones that I've done before.
Yeah.
I just know them. And so it's easy for me to just kind of grab and go, but like having more written down solid plans, I think would be helpful for the team as a whole.
Okay. All right.
And Corey just got some new big books that we can.
Yeah, I got some new big books with my grant that I'd be happy to share.
Yay.
I think I told you I've done shared reading at the pre-K. We always did a poem. So I've got 3 boxes full of sentence strip poems for just about every theme and holiday. So I've done them with littles before, but I would also like some help maybe
Sure.
focusing on some of the more advanced pieces
Sure.
for the older kids with those.
Yes, I would love that. I think that's the great thing about shared reading, is that it doesn't have to be a book. It's just whatever they can read with you, where you can model and show them those concepts. So that would be really fun. I think they would really enjoy getting to do something that's focused around the holidays too. That's always exciting for them to get to celebrate in that way too. And people used to take those and make like little poetry folders that they can read during read to self time as well.
That's a long-term goal.
Yes. Oh, yes. Baby steps, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, I know you guys have got to run to specials. I appreciate you so much and letting me have this time. And I will try to get with you guys about a time to come and plan shared reading and use those documents together, okay? But if you think of something later, just let me know, okay? All right.
Thank you.
So welcome.
Bye.
Bye. All right, Dr. Floyd. Thank you so much. I